Students, shadow guests, faculty members, and parents, welcome to our Grandparents' Day Assembly. Hello, I am Junior Alex Carson, your Master of Ceremonies for today's assembly. Today, the grandparents that we love and adore so much will get a look into what an assembly is like here at University High School. Each and every day, between second and third periods, we meet here in Andrews Hall. Most days, the meetings are 15 minutes and consist of announcements that any student can make and a short presentation. However, once a week, we gather for 55 minutes, which is an assembly where we might bring in a guest speaker to have a larger speech. Morning meetings and assemblies are vital parts of our school's sense of community, and today you will get a look into what an assembly is like. A series of presentations and performances will be made today by university students to showcase some things that we do here that we are very proud of. A unique part of the university curriculum is our January term program that allows students to travel or study exclusively one single topic for a 3-week period. Some January terms do end in travel, such as ones focusing on Rome or the United Nations, while some stay here to focus on things like drumming and children's literature. But one thing holds constant: students are exposed to a new wealth of knowledge, one that is an inch wide and a mile deep, as opposed to the typical educational experience. Junior Kit Clark and sophomore Ellie Clems were students in the National Parks January term, which concluded with a trip to Yosemite National Park in California, and are here today to show us an insight into January term.
Good morning. I'm Kit Clark. I'm Ellie Clems. And we took the January term this past year called National Parks, and taught by Mr. and Mrs. Bradley and Mr.
The speakers come in from different state and city parks and talk to us about their jobs, and we just learned a lot. My favorite discussion, we actually had a guy come in and talk to us about how he sets fires to, he worked for Carmel Parks and he set fires, and I thought that was pretty cool. He sets fires to preserve the grass and the natural biome where he works, so that was cool.
We learned a lot about human impact on the national parks and how they came to form, their purpose, and how it's our nation's greatest idea, and how now they're found all over the world, and how much work goes into them. What departments of the government actually are in charge of national parks and how those work. It was actually really interesting. And we ended the trip with a week in California. We flew into San Francisco and actually got to spend some time there. And we started.
Well, this is the first picture. This is Shade State Park, and we went there for a day trip, and that was our first actual hiking experience. So this is one of the creeks/rivers that we saw. So that was a really fun experience. We drove out there and hiked around all day and just got to get a taste of what it was going to be like for a week in Yosemite.
So once we got into San Francisco, we actually went to Muir Woods, and this is a picture right outside of the entrance. And I've never been to California or Yosemite, and these are the biggest trees I had ever seen. So, and those of you who have seen them in person can imagine. But it was beautiful, and to experience that with my classmates after learning so much about how much work was put into implementing these parks and preserving them, it was great.
And so we thought we were going to take this nice little hike up to this overlook. It ended up being a very strenuous and tiring hike, and we were all exhausted. But we got to the top, and we were looking out, and we could see the rest of the park, and we could barely see the Pacific Ocean in the distance. And we just got to sit up there in the quiet and write. And then we had lunch that we bought at the farmer's market that morning. So that was a really neat experience that we got to do that. That's just hiking.
You're very happy. It's tough. And that evening, actually, on the way back, we stopped at the Golden Gate Bridge. So you can't go to San Francisco, not go to the Golden Gate Bridge. We walked out to the middle of it, and it was incredible. It was beautiful. That was a great experience. Lots of fun. All right. So it was about a 6-hour bus ride from San Francisco up to Yosemite.
Scariest bus ride.
Yes.
Lots of mountain roads, and a huge bus.
So we got there and we stayed in Camp Curry, Curry Village, so right in the valley of Yosemite. And this is a picture actually I took. We had final projects that we had to do, Some people did nature writing while we were in Yosemite, just about what they were seeing and how they were experiencing it. Some people did journals, blogs. I chose to do a photography project, so this is one of my photographs that I submitted. And you can see Half Dome in the background there, which is one of Yosemite's most famous.
This is El Capitan, which is famous for climbing, just famous for being a huge rock face. And that was the first thing we saw when we entered Yosemite Valley, so that was a really cool memory. This is my trail group. You can kind of see off to the side how we're literally on the edge of a cliff, just hiking along. That was one of our first hikes, and it was very weird because we had spent all this time in the classroom, and then we got out, and you just look all around you, and you're surrounded by these huge granite rock faces, and you're on the side of a cliff, and you've got the beautiful mountain air. It was just crazy that we had spent 2 weeks in the classroom, and we got out there and we got to hike.
We had 2 trail groups, one that went with Mr. Priest and one that went with Mr. and Mrs. Bradley. Ellie was with Mr. Priest, I was with Bradley. We both had different experiences, but both,
Incredible, because
Yeah.
you're in Yosemite.
My trail group actually hiked up here to the top of Yosemite Falls. One day that was our challenge hike, and it was very challenging. It took us all day, but it was a great experience to do that with your classmates. And I never thought of hiking as something that you do together. It's very much something you do as a team, and I think it brought us together. We all brought each other up. It took some encouragement.
It's a bonding experience trying to get people to hike up a mountain with you. So
This is actually a tree.
that's the sign of where we stayed, and so we are in these little tiny tents. They were kind of like yurts, but we had one little heater in our bear boxes, and then you walk outside of your tent and you could see Half Dome, and you could see El Cap, and you could see all sorts of, just all the mountains were all around you, so that was really nice to wake up to that every morning. Okay. So this is my group. So one day, where's that your?
We did a lot of work understanding how we did, one of our catchphrases was leave no trace, LNT, and how we as citizens of the United States, and then also when we go into these national parks, can do our best to respect them and respect their beauty and also the animal life there. We learned a lot about just how the ecosystems work and how much impact humans can have or how little they can, depending on how they treat their environment around them. This was actually on our challenge hike, the way up.
I'll talk about this one. That's Kit, in case you can't tell. And so one day we went to the spider caves, which were caves formed by a rockfall. So it's complete darkness, no flashlights, no anything, and we had to guide each other through the caves. We just went in one by one, and you just had to listen to the person in front of you and trust that they were going to tell you how to get through the darkness without breaking your leg or something. So it was very frightening, and if anyone was claustrophobic, that was probably one of the most terrifying things they've probably ever done. But when you got to the very end and you came out of the hole, it was very cool to know that you had worked together and bonded with everyone just going through that experience.
We were the second trail group to go through, so as we walked up to this cave, I had no idea what
They didn't know what was going on.
So they just
we
popped
were
out
all
of the ground.
popping out of the hole in the ground, and they were all kind of freaked out.
This is my trail group on top of Yosemite Falls. We made it. And obviously we had gorgeous views. It was just incredible. We were so blessed. We had wonderful weather.
It was the middle of
in the middle of
January.
January.
It was in the 50s and 60s and sunny, so that was incredible.
So cold.
So cold, but when you're
I
hiking.
felt it. Yeah. So we actually went ice skating one night.
At the base of Half Dome, which was pretty amazing too.
That was a lot of fun. And that was something we all did together. We really enjoyed that.
This is Vernal Falls. So both trail groups got to see Vernon Falls, which is one of the main waterfalls. And I think later on we have a picture of Nevada Falls, but my trail group, one day we hiked 9.3 miles, and we got to see 2 waterfalls in one day, and that was incredible because they both looked like this, but you could hear ice chunks breaking off, and you could still hear the water. It was incredible if you just stood there in silence.
And it was really cool to experience it in January because this trail isn't normally open. Our guide was explaining to us, we were very lucky to get to go on this. It was fun to experience. And you can see in the summer when all the water is flowing that it gets a lot bigger.
It's a view of the valley, and you can see Half Dome is the big rock in the center. This is my tow group, and this was our first day. We were on an old stagecoach road, so it wasn't very well kept, so we were kind of jumping over boulders and clawing our way through trees. But when we got to the very end, it was just this huge overlook out into the mountains. So that was our first view of Yosemite, which was incredible. Back to my tow group, we had lunch on top of a boulder on the side of a cliff. So we actually had to go down the side of the cliff to get to the boulder to eat lunch, so that was scary, but once we got there, it was incredible because felt like we were in the middle, like just floating.
Well, for me, this J-term was something that I would never do. I'm not the person to grab a backpack and a pair of hiking boots and rock it for a week. But I was so glad that I took this. And January term is, for me, a new way to expose myself to things that I wouldn't necessarily do on my own time in a regular classroom or during the year. This was a truly unique experience, and I discovered a love of nature in a different way, and really got to know some people and enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed this J-term. My grandfather was actually a park ranger at Yosemite, so it was incredible to get there and go see things that he had seen, and it was incredible in that aspect. And also, I had done hiking before, but never like this, and so it was incredible just to. There are not many places where you get to spend a week with some of your closest friends hiking in the mountains and getting to see these gorgeous views, and you learn so much, and it's an experience I'll never forget.
Thank you.
Next up on our list of events today is junior Morgan Wood, who will be reading an original writing titled My Night.
Good morning. Hi, grandparents. Just going to give a little bit of forward of what I'm writing. I apologize if it's seemingly conceited, but the assignment at the beginning of the year, I'm in AP English and Language and Composition, and the assignment at the beginning of the year was to write about a memory that was significant in our lives and that we can relate to, and it had a significant effect on us. So go ahead and read it. My night. God must have been with us that entire day. We were looking for cheap tickets for a Broadway show, a rarity as we all know. So we approached an older man working the ticket booth inside a theater in Times Square. He was quick to tell me that if I had a student ID on me, I could get myself and one other person in the third row for $26.50 each. Of course, I had my student ID in my right pocket. So my mom immediately took the deal and we left, not thinking about my dad who was in the city with us. I instantaneously dropped the idea of going to see a show, especially if a third of the wood pile in New York City had to miss out, despite the fact that he didn't even want to go. Being the persistent people we are, we went back to the same gray-haired man at that ticket booth. I used my skills of persuasion toward the old man and received one more ticket for $26.50. Third row. My parents sat on either side of me. We had varying thoughts regarding what would come next. Dad wasn't even planning on coming because he had no desire to see it, but I wanted to be there more than anything. I had seen it promoted and watched the movie multiple times. I just wanted to see it come to life and see her. The curtain went up, the lights went down for dramatic effect. The orchestra began to play, and the songs that I had listened to over and over on the soundtrack were going through my head, but on a more intensified level. My parents sat there, not half as excited as I was, but I was still anticipating a hopefully decent show. The difference between us was that I knew the show would be amazing, and this is because of Laura Bell Bundy. For those who live and breathe everything that is Broadway, Laura Bell Bundy is a household name. Her breakout role was the attention-obsessed Amber in the original Broadway production of Hairspray. She had a feature role in the movie Jumanji as the teenage version of the character Sarah. Also, Laura was the first understudy for Kristen Chenoweth, the original Glinda, in Broadway's biggest hit, Wicked, and had a starring role herself as a young, talent-crazed Tina in the infamous production of Ruthless. What I find to be the most interesting part about all of this is that her understudies in that role were Natalie Portman and Britney Spears. Years down the road, she's pretty in pink right before my eyes. The lights go up and half of the first song has to pass before Laura can make her grand entrance. Before I could even prepare myself, Laura opened her mouth and let go a sound that was full of clarity and bliss. I had no idea someone could produce a sound like that. Being the 13-year-old self I was, I felt as if she was singing the lyrics to Oh My God right to me. Her voice went right through me, and I couldn't wait to hear more. Her comedic timing was perfect. Her tears came right on cue. Her luscious blonde wig fell just perfectly below her shoulders. Needless to say, I was in tears by the finale. After the last high C was sung, all I could think about was one thing. I have to get to the stage door first. I tried to be as discreet and mature as I possibly could. My parents asked me if I wanted to meet her, and initially I said no. I didn't want to keep them through the Legally Blonde torture parade any longer, so I just suggested we go get dessert instead. Luckily, my dad stopped me and said, "You will never get another opportunity like this, so we should go see if Laura's at the stage door." To this day, I have no idea how much my life would be different if those words had not come out of his mouth. To my surprise, we turned the corner and easily reached the door. By God's grace, there were barely any people there. After all, it was a Wednesday night. Not many people show up to a Broadway show in the middle of the week. This January night was cold, and the weather caught up with me as I held both my hands tightly in my plaid jacket pockets, and my excitement began to dwindle. My parents attempted to talk to me and get my mind off the weight. My anxiety rose, and I succumbed to my nervous habit of chattering my teeth. I sat there with a grin clear across my cheeks. I looked up at my parents. They had matching grins on their faces, too. A Broadway star can make anyone starstruck. About 10 minutes passed, and I could begin to feel my parents getting antsy. They were done waiting for Elle Woods. We were moments from walking away when I turned around, and there she was. Her hair was pulled back into a loose, beautiful blonde ponytail. She had a black shirt on that was barely noticeable past her deep pink winter coat. I was in the moment, that moment when your heart freezes over, and you have seconds to think about what you're going to say to your 13-year-old image of a celebrity. I ran through multiple times. "You were outstanding." "No, too much butt kissery." "Can I have your autograph?" Well, I've always wanted to say that. "Please get me a job out here." I nearly went with that one, since the purpose of us being in New York City in the first place was for me to get an agent and begin working. I turned to my parents for guidance, but their guardian instincts kicked in, and all they could do was smile with me through all the excitement. She made her way through the small line of people. The line consisted of my parents and I, along with a small crowd of teenage girls who stood next to me chatting it up with Laura Bell Bundy. We later learned that this group went to every single Wednesday night performance to get the student discount, and also because they loved hearing the lyrics to Legally Blonde remix just that much. The cast coming from the stage door called them by name and acted like they'd known these girls for years. I hope my envy for them didn't show. However, my green face soon left me as the Queen of Pink herself finally made it to my part of the line. Of course, I found myself completely speechless. It felt as if I creepily stared into her grayish blue eyes for a decade. But her words soon cut off my constant gaze. "Hi, nice to meet you." I was in the middle of shaking her hand when her words trailed off, and she started to stare intensely into my brown eyes for what seemed like a decade. She began to show a clearly confused expression that I had no idea how to decipher. Then, I experienced the most unexpected, spontaneous moment of my entire life. Laura Bell threw herself on the ground, slapped her knee, and shot right back up, staring into my eyes once again, but with a purpose and an intention to say one thing that would stay with me forever. "You're that girl from Kid Nation," she screamed as she laughed out loud and pretty much gasped for air simply at the sight of me. An innocent 13-year-old going on 14 girl who got a lucky break and just so happened to dwell in an abandoned ghost town with 40 other random kids for 40 days was sitting in front of a Broadway star who literally had her name and face in the lights in the middle of Times Square. My mind was blown. When people say they don't know what to say, this isn't always true. I seriously had no words available that could flow out of my mouth and allow me to communicate with the woman I idolized who had just recognized me, of all people, from a show that had less than 2 million viewers nationwide. "Christian and I watched that show religiously," she said, Christian being the leading man playing her nerdy but oh-so-cute love interest Emmett. So here's what's going through my mind right now. Laura Bell Bundy knew my name before I could even tell her what it was. I was standing there like a silent idiot, not knowing how to respond. And the now ex-husband of Sutton Foster, an even bigger Broadway star featured as Fiona in Shrek the Musical, probably sat down on his New York City apartment couch with his amazingly talented wife and watched me attempt to boil water and cook pasta on that first night in Bonanza City. Sounds like a good time. Finally, my brain began to function once again, and one reaction immediately came to me that I expressed all around. I began to laugh. I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in such an astonished way in my entire life. Before I knew it, my parents were cracking up and had no idea what to do with themselves. They could hardly believe what was going on. If I remember correctly, they barely said anything themselves. Laura's second reaction after throwing herself on the ground was to order people around to find her a camera so we could get a picture together. I continued to laugh hysterically with a grin that was clear across my cheeks, the same one that was plastered on my face when Laura first came out on stage. I smiled the best smile I could muster and felt Laura's face touching mine. There was an unexplainable warmth there. That's when I knew we would stay in touch. Before I could try and gasp out another word, Laura was signing my program. Might I add, with a drawing of her as Elle Woods on it. And what came next, I'll never forget. She took out a small piece of paper and wrote down her email, asking me to send her our copy of the picture of us together and to stay in touch. My life was made. We said our goodbyes, and I gave one last hug to what I like to call my new best friend. As I turned my back in the most surprising moment of my life, my hands cupped over my mouth and my parents laughed alongside me. We simply couldn't contain our excitement. Keeping our cool in this unexpected situation was not an option. To celebrate, we went to an extremely fancy restaurant that charged us $40 for one dessert. It was worth it. Two things come to my mind when I think about reflecting upon how this one moment in time had and still has so much significance in my life. The first is my relationship with Laura Bell. As soon as I got home, I emailed her that picture of us and thanked her again for her amazing performances. She emailed me back within a month or so and continued to respond to my annoying teenager inboxes that would surely make her want to not even respond at all. But she's a better person than that. My mom and I went back to New York about a year later for a follow-up with my agent and an audition for the up-and-coming Broadway show 13. I begged my mom to go see her in the show just one more time. Of course, she acquiesced to my request, and once again, I sat through the most pink I've ever seen on one stage at a time in my life. After the show, Laura invited us to visit her in her dressing room. Let me repeat that, her dressing room. I walked in, and the walls were baby pink, lined with framed pictures of her, with many various celebrities, such as Miley Cyrus. I was in awe. She greeted us with a more tired smile than before. Her hair looked thinner, and she had lost a good 30 pounds or so, which was frightening because she barely weighed anything before. Her name in lights was officially getting to her, and I could tell. Yet she had the generosity to sit me down and catch up on my plans for musical theater and how my agent was working with me. People like Laura Bell Bundy are what I call keepers. They make time for you just because they want to. They invite you to their workshops in Lexington, Kentucky, out of the goodness of their hearts. They listen to you. They appreciate you. They love you. I could tell that Laura and I had a bond that would forever be unbreakable. I haven't heard from her for a couple of years, but I'm still confident that she's not forgotten about that one girl from Kid Nation, the nice one. And to think, what would that night have been had we not looked into buying cheaper tickets for a show only I wanted to see? Well, to be perfectly honest, my life would have been completely different. There are reasons why, like Patricia Campbell, I told myself to remember this, hang on to this. The very word, remember, spiraled up like a snake out of a basket, a magic catch in its sound. I wanted nothing more than to remember every small, minuscule detail. Thank you.
Next up on our agenda today, we have a violin trio consisting of junior Taylor Hines, sophomore Carolyn Todd, and freshman Nia Townsend to perform for us. up on the agenda today, we have Junior Roshni Bag and teacher Chris Morrison to talk about a unique environmental grant opportunity the university has recently received.
All right, hi everyone, my name is Roshni Bhatt and I'm a junior here. Late fall last year, I heard about the Carmel Green Team Micro Grant, a program that funds youth-driven projects in the Carmel area to make it a more environmentally friendly community. My first reaction after learning about this project was that we definitely had to bring it to university. So I started looking for what we could do around the school to make university a more environmentally friendly place. I was surprised to see that our school already had taken quite a bit of green initiative. If you look around, we have a pretty extensive recycling program, and our hallways are primarily lit by CFLs, or energy-conserving light bulbs. What I did notice, however, was that we were relatively lacking in trees. University is a fairly young school, as it opened its doors only 12 years ago in 2000. While it has expanded considerably by switching from modular classrooms to real classrooms in new buildings, and significantly expanding the student body, there hasn't been much opportunity to upgrade the landscaping. In addition to complementing our school's obvious architectural beauty, trees on the school ground would provide shade as well as substantial environmental impact. As we all know, university students and faculty rely on private transportation to get to school every day. That means our student body's carbon footprint, which is a term indicating how much carbon dioxide emissions we produce, is quite high. Therefore, we have an increased responsibility to take measures to offset this carbon footprint, and I figured we could do this by planting more trees. I consulted Mrs. Webster and Mr. Walls, recruited a few students who had similar interests, and started the University High School Green Club. On behalf of the Green Club, I then wrote and submitted the grant applications at the end of February. After much deliberation, we named the project the Tree Hugging Trailblazers. The grant money that could be attained was $1,000, and the application required a detailed plan and budget. Through phone conversations with the Carmel Green Team president, I realized that they would only allocate funds to those organizations which would have the most robust plans for all avenues for cost reduction, including solicitation of discounts from vendors. First step for the tree planting project was finding a good tree vendor. I contacted several local tree services, and after much negotiation, found a vendor called Affordable Trees based in Anderson, Indiana, that supported our cause and gave us a substantial student discount. They usually sold big 12-foot trees for $300 a piece, but agreed to give us 4 of these big trees for a discounted total price of about $900, plus a donation of 36-foot trees for free. I approached our community service club chair, Mr. Morrison, who was immediately very supportive of our effort, and when the time came for an in-person interview at the Carmel Monon Center on Saturday, March 11th, he joined the Green Team, which comprised Leah Lovely, Izzy Baez, Umi Scales, Victoria Oberdorf, and myself. I'm happy to report that in true university style, we absolutely killed the interview, primarily by showing team solidarity, passion for our project, and a very well-thought-out, robust project plan. To our great delight, we were notified just a few days later that we had been awarded the largest grant in the entire program of $1,000, which was actually $21 higher than what we had even applied for. Some of us from the Green Team, Mr. Morrison and Mr. Walls, went to the Carmel City Hall on March 21st to receive a check for $1,000 from the Carmel mayor. So we're all set to get 34 trees for university, 4 12-footers and 36-footers. Each of the trees, a combination of red maple and Cleveland pears, are native to Indiana and are known to be hardy, as well as drought and disease resistant. In terms of environmental impact, the number of trees that we are getting is particularly important. Each tree will absorb over 1 metric ton, which is 2,200 pounds of CO2 from the atmosphere over its lifetime, thereby helping to fight climate change, improve the condition of air and water, restore wildlife habitat, and enhance the quality of life for future generations. So, 34 trees will be offsetting 34 metric tons of CO2 over its lifetime. As comparison, 1 metric ton of CO2 is released to the atmosphere for every 103 gallons of gasoline used. So you can see, this is definitely going to help us lower the school's carbon footprint. Apart from the monumental environmental impact, I must confess that I had somewhat of a vested interest in selecting a project to plant trees. Like any student who loves their school and feels proud to be here every day, I would love for us to be able to leave an indelible mark, a permanent positive impact on our school. Our 34 trees will be here a very long time, and when all of us sitting in this room here today come back for high school reunions, or for any other reasons, we can look back and say, hey, I was involved in getting those trees planted. All the trees will be delivered on May 11th, which is a Friday. The tree vendor will be the primary resource for planting the 4 big trees on that day, but students will be required to assist as much as possible and learn. It is, after all, a student-driven project, so please let me know if you need help. I'll be running a sign-up sheet, and we'll really appreciate any help and involvement. For the planting of the 30 smaller trees, we will be completely relying on the wonderful student body and faculty on May 25th, which is Prize Day. On that day, for the division of labor in the most meaningful way, we've decided that most mentoring groups will each get their own tree to plant, and some groups will have to share. Hopefully, if you stop by our school after graduation, you'll see a noticeable difference in the landscaping. On behalf of the Green Club, I would like to thank Mr. Wallace, Mr. Morrison, and Ms. Gleisman for all their help during the whole process. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi guys, I'm Kelly Pittman, and this year I was president of Dance Marathon, and it was our first dance marathon ever, so it was a huge success. I was originally a student at Cardinal High School, which is where I first was involved with Dance Marathon, and as a senior, the only thing I wanted this year was to start Dance Marathon here and continue it in the coming years. So with me, I have Kit Clark, who's a junior, and she was my chair-elect, which means next year she'll be taking over and be president. And also sophomore Bailey Priest, and she was one of our executives with Morale at Entertainment. So if you could give them a round of applause. A little bit of history before they do their stuff. Dance Marathon is a Riley Children's Hospital fundraiser. All the proceeds go to Riley Children's Hospital and research. And then the point of the Dance Marathon is you're standing for the kids who can't. So it's a 6-hour event, and y'all come and you're wearing like the t-shirts, and it has a theme, so we were superheroes. And we have some pictures about Dance Marathon as they continue speaking.
Alright, so as Kelly said, this was our first dance marathon at University High School, and it was just
Yeah, it was on March 24th, so right before spring break.
and it was just a great event. We had so much leading up to it. Stand up if you worked on committee or if you were an executive. Are any of y'all in here? How many of you guys came? You can just raise your hand. There's a lot of people came. It was great.
Okay, so we had 80 students come, which is over 25% of our school, and we raised $9,204.16. It's really good because
Well, we originally raised that.
yeah, that was our first, and then we got to like 10,000, right after the event. But this is our first dance marathon, and usually the first schools raise from like 1,000 to 5,000.
Yeah.
So somewhere around 1,000 or 5,000. So we made like double that, which is really good for our first dance marathon. So we're on the right track. Yeah.
So it was very successful. Our theme this year, for those of you who don't know what the dance marathon is, we can probably explain it. It's a 6-hour event. Ours was March 24th, and we're standing dancing for the kids who can't. So the pictures you see are from the actual event. Our theme was superheroes. So it was stand up, be a superhero for the kids at Riley. Raise money, $9,000 for our first year. That's amazing. It was just a great experience. And while we were there, we actually teach the participants a dance. So we have a line dance that we learn throughout the entire 6 hours, and you can't sit down the whole time. So it's incredibly tiring, incredibly fun. Great food, great people. It was just a great time.
Along with learning dance, we had different activities. So we had like we had a banner with our handprints and like little written notes from each of the dancers, and then we had cakewalk and a
card making station where you wrote cards to the Riley children. And then throughout the whole event, we incorporated the terms SMC and FTK. And FTK stands for the kids, and SMC stands for Sarah Michelle Cohen. And she actually was a university high school student for a few years, and we all worked closely with Barb Cohen. She is her mom, and their son is actually one of the presidents of Riley Dance Marathon. And so he works with colleges and high schools around Indiana to put these on. And Sarah unfortunately lost her battle to cancer 2 years ago. And so we wanted to make sure that her presence was here during our dance marathon. And her dream at university was to get dance marathon started. And unfortunately, with how sick she wasn't able to do it herself. So that was about 5 or 6 years ago that she attempted to get that started. So we finally did it, and it was for her, and it was right before what would have been her 21st birthday. So we said we gave her the best birthday present that she could ever ask for. So.
But we just wanted to thank all of you for coming out and participating in this, to the faculty for all the support they gave. And it'll be back around next year, so look out. We're going to try to beat our total. So thank you in advance for your continued support. And we hope that you all just had a great time, and grandparents, we're so happy to share with you the new things that we're starting here at university and how it's just bringing our community more together.